Why pain and suffering? The world is full of pain, fear, and suffering. These feelings, without any exceptions, are experienced by all humans. It's what causes our heart to ache, our mind to go haywire, and our emotions to become distorted. People often wonder, how do we handle all these problems? Why does God allow these difficult trials to happen? Currently, I'm watching my own father go through cancer and chemotherapy. It is devastating to watch him go through this. I found some consoling words from the Holy Fathers. Saint Nikon of Optina writes the following: "A life without sorrows is a sign of God's disapproval. We should not envy those who live without sorrows, for the end of their sorrowlessness is grievous." Saint John of Kronstadt says the following: "The Lord, as an artful physician, subjects us to various trials, sorrows, illnesses, and misfortunes, in order to purify us like gold in the furnace. A soul that is hardened in various sins does not easily undergo cleansing and healing, but has to be forced to a great extent, and only through lengthy experience and patience and suffering does it become accustomed to virtue and begins to love God, from whom it was alienated after becoming attached to all kinds of mortal sins. Such is the purpose of the trials and tribulations sent to us by God in this life." Saint Paisios of Mount Athos had said quite a few things. Here is a question and answer. Question: Elder Saint Paisios, why does God allow a calamity to happen? Answer: there are all kind of reasons. Sometimes God will allow something to happen so that something better may come out of it, and other times He wants to educate us. Some people are rewarded and others pay a debt. Nothing is wasted. You know, whatever God allows, even when human beings perish, it is done out of love for man, because God has a heart. When pain visits a person, then Christ visits him. Patience is the spiritual defense and humility the greatest weapon against the devil. Saint Paisios again stated, "The crosses of trials are superior to the talents, to the gifts that God gives us. Blessed is he who has not one cross but 5. A suffering or a martyr's death is also a pure reward. Therefore, in every trial, let us say, 'Thank you, my God, because this was necessary for my salvation.'" Saint Paisios again said, "God never abandons us. We are the ones who forget and abandon Him. When man does not live spiritually, he is not entitled to divine help. But when he does live spiritually and is near God, he is entitled to it. Then if something happens and he dies, he is ready for the other life, in which case he gains both in this life and in the next." Saint Paisios again stated, speaking, "With the people I went through so much pain. I didn't pass over their problems lightly. I was painted by them. I sighed over them. But with every sigh, I turned the matter over to God, and in the pain I felt for the other person, God provided consolation. That is to say, divine consolation came with the spiritual approach, because the pain which carries with it hope in God also has divine consolation. Otherwise, how is one to endure? How could I possibly get through all the things that I hear? Yes, I feel the pain, but I also think of the divine reward in those who are suffering. We are in God's hands. Since there is divine justice, divine reward, nothing is lost. The more one is tormented, the more he will be rewarded. Although God sees so much suffering upon the earth, even things which we cannot imagine, He never falters. "You have suffered more?" He asks. "I will provide you with more in the other life." And He rejoices. Otherwise, how could He endure so much injustice, so much evil that exists? But He keeps in mind the reward of those who suffer, and, in a manner of speaking, endures that great pain. We don't see the glory to be received by the other person, and so we feel compassion for him, and for this God rewards us with divine consolation. Finally, Saint Paisios said the following: Paradise is full of cancer patients. When the body is tested, then the soul is sanctified. With illnesses, our body, this earthen house of ours, suffers, but thus its master, our soul, will rejoice eternally in the heavenly palace that Christ is preparing for us. With this spiritual logic, which is absurd for worldly people, I also rejoice and boast about the physical injuries I have. The only thing I do not think about is that I will have a heavenly reward. I understand that I am repaying my ingratitude to God, since I have not responded to His great gifts and benefits. We went through fire and water, and you brought us out to rest, says the psalmist. You see, the Virgin Mary also suffered for us, and the saints suffered for us, which is why we too must suffer, since we follow the same path, with the difference that when we have a little suffering in this life, we pay our bills, spiritual debts, and are saved. But Christ also came to earth with suffering. He came down from heaven, became incarnate, suffered, and was crucified. And now the Christian understands the visit of Christ in this way, with suffering. When suffering visits a person, then Christ visits him. Whereas when a person does not go through any trials, it is like an abandonment by God. Elder Thaddeus of Vitovnica said the following: All our holy fathers lived a good life, a peaceful life. They all say that the perfection of the Christian life is found in perfect humility. This means that endurance and prolonged suffering is what we need most in this life. We must suffer everything with patience and forgive everyone. If we have good thoughts and desires, these thoughts will give us peace and joy even in this life, let alone in eternity. Saint Porphyrios stated, The martyrs suffered greatly when they were tormented. They suffered in the same way as any normal person would have suffered, with the difference that they were continually united to Christ through prayer and partook of a force which was greater than their pain, and in this way they were able to conquer. If, however, they had abandoned prayer, even for just a moment, their pains would have become unbearable, and they would have been ready to deny Christ. However, hanging on to prayer, they were strengthened and endured the pain of their martyrdom until the end. Elder Ephraim of Arizona said the following: By undergoing these pains and afflictions, I am doing God's will, and this will bring about the forgiveness of my previous offenses. By paying here the debt of my sentence, I shall receive my freedom there in the life to come, where I shall live eternally. Whereas here, no matter how much suffering I may undergo, it is temporary and short-lived. So, my child, we need patience so as not to be condemned with the unrepentant world. Regardless of what might happen to us, through patience everything is put aright, and the inner man will find peace, bearing patiently what God has allowed. Elder Ephraim of Arizona also stated, If God wills that we suffer, He has some salvific purpose in mind which we earthly ones are unable to foresee, whereas patience, forbearance, and the humble acceptance of trials will always, yes, always bring certain benefit later. My child, bear your cross, and know that all that we suffer is known to God, and as a true Father, He tries in every way to form Jesus Christ within us. He wants us to suffer because He knows what He has prepared in the heavens for His suffering children. But if He did not send them afflictions, He would do them injustice, because they would be deprived of the ineffable blessings of heaven. The more we suffer, the more beautifully our crown of glory is woven.
Kyrie eleison, 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 Kyrie eleison.